Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Project Zion podcast. I'm your host, Katie Langston, and I'm here with an absolute treat for you today. I'm sitting in the dining room of Vivian Jenkins-Nelsen, who is, well, she'll introduce herself to you in a moment here. We've just had some lovely tea and some muffins that have been beyond delicious. But in particular, Vivian has a remarkable story in terms of her own faith journey. She's an anti-racism activist, a scholar, has received the presidential volunteer award from Barack Obama, and is a pillar of the community here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it's just a treat to have her with us today. So thank you so much for being here, Vivian.
Thank you, Katie.
Why don't you start by just sort of introducing yourself to us and telling us a little bit about, kind of you could talk a little bit about your credentials, and then we'll dive into the story.
Oh, well, I think the most relevant credential I have is that I was born into the family that I was. Both my dad and mom were very active in the civil rights movement. I come out of a family of educators. So educators and social workers. My, I guess most important shaper was being born in Selma, Alabama. And growing up as a child at the height of segregation, and then having my dad be part of dismantling that.
Wow.
And active with Dr. King. And I think probably my most transformative moment was with him as he talked to me as one day when they were trying to get a whole lot of other planning done. But instead he talked to me about what I was thinking and believing at that moment. And it really turned my life around.
So back up and share just a little bit about, you said you come from a family of educators and social workers, grew up in Selma, Alabama. Talk a little bit about maybe your upbringing and your background in faith as well.
Okay. So my dad was a Lutheran pastor and educator. So he taught at Alabama Lutheran College. My mother was at the academy, and my grandmother was with the college. And so we were living there, and Dad's students came back from several wars, and they were instrumental in getting Dr. King in and so forth. And I remember very, very clearly the day that we left town because the sheriff sent an escort out.
Wow.
And to threaten my dad. And we were right at the Pettus Bridge. I was in third grade. And I'll never forget the words, if you ever come back to town, he said, he said, we'll throw you up under the jail and throw away the key.
Oh my gosh.
And so, that was a moment never to be forgotten, let me tell you. And so he took a call to a Lutheran church in Charlotte for a couple of years and then moved on to Omaha, Nebraska, where actually the same story repeated itself, where he became president of the Black Pastors group, and they were doing demonstrations and all that kind of stuff. And Dr. King came and worked with them. And the moment that I was alluding to earlier was that he came through to meet with my dad and some other leaders in that group, and we met him in the office of the director of the airport, and his life was being threatened and so forth and so on. And I was the only young person there, and I was in college, and my mother had told me to come, and this might be the last time I would see him. It turned out not to be, but in any event, I was really in a very radical mode, as was my younger brother, who was a Black Panther. And the long and short of it was that he was interested because I was the only kid there. And he came over and talked to me, and we never stopped talking. And they were supposed to be planning, he was in between planes, and they were supposed to be planning stuff for Selma and so forth. But he spent the whole time talking to me in the corner. And we talked about so many things. But one of the things was that he really understood my anger at that point and was able to relate to that. And he also talked to me about the potential that was really in that room that had already happened, and the changes that had happened since I was a little girl. And so I remember telling him that he was leading the black people in the wrong direction.
Really?
Yeah. He was going to get us all killed.
How did he respond to that?
He just kind of smiled. And he didn't take the bait. But anyway, then I told him that, white people just didn't get it. And we were going to have to take up arms and shoot them if necessary.
Wow.
And he didn't overreact to that either. But he did respond in a very respectful way about how he understood that I might feel that way, and that we'd lose the arms battle if it came to that. And, but anyway, that wasn't a compelling reason. The real compelling part was in his, not only in the message, but the messenger in this case. And there was a kind of deep, deep peace about him that was quite striking. And I remember telling my mother afterwards I was not going to wash my hands. Because he had held both of mine and his and talked about so many things. But anyway, so like I say, that was a pivotal moment.
Oh, I can imagine.
Just pivotal. Mm-hmm.
What is it, you said that he had just a peace about him. Mm-hmm. What do you think was at the bottom of that? And what did you take away from that was so transformative for you?
Well, it was a very... it wasn't the kind of, let me see how to say this. It wasn't the kind of peace that is very like a lake kind of peace.
Yeah.
It wasn't that kind of, oil on the troubled waters kind of thing. But it was like a real centeredness in spite of all this stuff that was going on around him.
Yeah. And
the threats and so forth. I know he had to be afraid at times.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it seemed to be so authentic. That he'd found his center, in which the rest of all this did not shake or break or get him off track or unfocused. And I knew it was faith. I mean, there was no two ways about that. And, he was very clear in what he had to say about his faith. Mm-hmm. And so I was always very taken by the fact that most people read this, the way he spoke, as kind of, it's the black minister's delivery. Well, yes and no. It was coming from a very deep place that I had seen off stage as well as on stage. Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. So,
where were you at this point when you had this encounter with him in your faith journey? You said,
by that
grew
time,
up the daughter of a Lutheran minister.
Oh, no, not just Lutheran. Mm-hmm. Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod.
Right. Which for our listeners is a more conservative version.
Oh, yes.
Much more conservative version.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. And by the time I got to college, I had already in high school gone through a number of kind of impasses with the faith. And I hadn't even come to the part about women being able to be part of the ministry.
Right.
But it was more around really wondering whether or not God could really allow these terrible things to happen to people and still be a just God. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand at that time there were lynchings going on like you couldn't believe, and children were being killed. I was profoundly upset by the murder of Emmett Till.
Oh, yes.
He was just a couple years older than me. And my best friend was Jewish, and she wanted to go to Israel, and I wanted to go to the Holy Land, and so she and I had planned that we were going to go to Israel. And those plans were, of course, interrupted by college, but more importantly, it gave me a chance to really reach back to the Old Testament. And the Old Testament was pretty clear about, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Those are all things I resonated with. And it was less confusing to me than the New Testament. And so I was beginning to sort of find a niche there. But then the next thing that really happened there was that I became more aware of what was going on with Palestinians. And so I went to school with them. And so that was a real eye-opening, that was a different side of the conversation, let's put it that way. And at this time, I was finding myself moving more and more into the agnostic place, and finding that while I was not altogether sure that there was a heaven, as we had been told, up there in the sky, and a hell down there in the, down there beneath the ground, whatever. And as I became more influenced in terms of things like evolution, and I was very interested in science. So there were digs all around us at college, and which I wanted to be part of. But I knew very well that the Earth was not made in a 24-hour span. So that didn't make me friends and win and influence people in the Missouri Synod. So it was just kind of a pileup of all these kinds of things that finally I just said to myself, well, I believe it's something bigger than me. I don't know how this works out, but I just can't do it. I just can't line up there anymore. So time went on, and as things moved on in my life, I began to really have a hunger for theology. And, and really rereading all that stuff I was forced to read. Buber and Bonhoeffer and so forth. And I was very struck by the fact that Bonhoeffer, who you'll have to explain to folks who he was, had been in the U.S. and had been in the Black Church. In fact, he was in my aunt's church in New York. And so, as a graduate student, and and he was very clear that there was a role for Christians to really be proactive, to be active. In fact, he was part of the group that tried to take out Hitler.
Right.
So, explain a little bit about him.
Well, I hope I'll do it justice. I know Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran German theologian and pastor, and it was very, very influential. He had been caught as part of the group that tried to assassinate Hitler, and he was executed for that. Yeah, he was put into a camp and then killed after that. Not long before the camps were saved, really, by the Allies and opened up. And he had been very influenced by the Black struggle in the United States. I remember he was a grad student. For the class, the reason I know Vivian is because she taught a class here at Luther Seminary on dismantling racism in the church and in Christian education. And we read Cohen's The Cross and the Lynching Tree, which I would highly recommend to everyone. Yes, absolutely. It's a life-changing read. It really is. And he talked about how Bonhoeffer was very influenced by the Black struggle, kind of to the I don't know if this is the right word, but the perplexment. That's not a right word, but pretty good. I'm going to steal it. Making it up here. Perplexment. Yeah, but of some of his white colleagues. Oh yes. At Purdue, was at Union. Yeah, Union Theological Seminary in New York City, and so that's very interesting that sort of formed, the bedrock of a lot of what he did. Yeah, and what he went back to Germany to do in Germany. But, or rather, and the most important thing for me and Buber, in fact, he was a poet and he wrote many hymn
verses, one of which I had at my wedding, and people were perplexed then. As this one is not a wedding song. Right. The words go, once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide. And whether truth or falsehood, or the evil side. And he talks about kings and so forth and so on holding sway and the decisions that we have to make. It's really a powerful tune. That's beautiful, yeah. Once to every one in nation is the name of the hymn.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll look it up.
Yeah. So anyway, this may seem a conundrum that this was in the very early pre-days, really, of the movement, and there are many strands of it. That's another thing that people need to understand. And so, the one strand existed in our household of the Black Panthers, and then the other strand of my dad and his nonviolent protesting existed, and we were able to live peacefully in the same house. And in fact, Dad was so he was so cool. He ended up going out with my brother, talking up the Black Panthers breakfast program.
Really?
Yeah, the two of them would make talks together, which perplexed people in the movement.
Oh, sure.
The civil rights movement. Why would he be in with this more violent end of the movement? And I can remember a Thanksgiving dinner once where we had guests, and my brother was home and from college, and he put his revolver in the sideboard. And it was like, okay, that's the most normal thing ever. We just go on eating. Nobody ever said a word, it's just like, okay, fine. Right. But that was also the kind of freedom that he allowed James to as well. And so I can remember, too, my older brother, who was a music teacher in Denver, one of the poshier suburbs at the time, that when this made, as it did make the press, anything that my dad was only a Black Lutheran pastor for miles and miles and miles,
sure.
States and states.
Right.
So anything like that, like his son getting arrested, that made the paper.
Right.
And so my brother's, I think it was his principal, said to him that he was relieving him of his teaching duties until my younger brother, was proved innocent.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so he lost his job, and he would go every day and sit in jail with my brother.
Oh.
Yeah, and Dad would fly out occasionally, just to keep his spirits up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was it? I mean, we live in such a polarized time now where it seems like, we were chatting about this a little bit, even within a movement, you kind of have Bernie supporters and Hillary supporters at each other's throats, and it's like, they're on the same team.
Yep.
So what do you think it was that allowed your family and, your dad and your mom to be able to coexist with differences of opinion on really important things in
really
peace.
Big one.
Yeah, with
really
peace and
big
love.
ones.
How did they do that?
That's an interesting question. I've never really quite thought about it. Looking back, they were always interested in things, in the real world. And they were willing to question things, and if they didn't agree with them, then they very quietly went on about doing things. Like, we were forbidden to have Catholic and Jewish friends.
Huh.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't do that. But they had Catholic and Jewish friends. So, it was like...
Oh, in the Missouri Synod.
In the Missouri Synod.
In the Missouri Synod.
Oh, yeah.
You, not your family. Okay, I got it. Got it. Okay.
Well, and then that played out directly to folks like pastors.
Right.
Or you so...
Right.
And, for example, they had learned to stand up to the church, and that took real guts to... I think they were people who were true believers, but they were also people who could question. and still felt that they had a place inside of the church in order to take a stand, as Luther would say.
Yeah.
And my dad was as conservative as they come. We were Nixonites to begin with. And so the whole idea that that a paradigm, a way of thinking could be turned over as you're questioning and questioning, I could see them questioning.
So they wrestled as well.
They wrestled as well with things, and then and they were partners in that. So it wasn't like my mom didn't get her say and Dad made all the decisions or anything like that. But you'd hear those discussions going on, quite pointed discussions about things that were happening in the church or not happening in the church.
Right.
And so I saw them living out lives of real ethical and moral dimensions. They were connected to each other and connected to us in a very strong way, and their vision and values were being developed as they lived in the church and so forth and so on. And I saw that, heard that, and that was part of my that was also part of the decision making I was making at the time as a kid, to really kind of go my own way.
Right.
And I knew, because they were struggling too, that they were less like other parents to say, I did it this way, you have to do it that way, because their way was changing.
Right.
Yeah. And it was, as King called it, the zeitgeist. It was the times. It was what was going on. It was happening. And, my dad had read widely, of course, and he knew all about Gandhi and so forth and so on, and really felt that way of life was closer to the Christian ideal, which is the non-violent and so forth.
Yeah.
And really helping the poor.
Right.
'Cause that was his call. That was Gandhi's call.
Absolutely.
So, and so he was also, I would say in his own way, a systematic theologian. And that definitely was what King was about.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So, they resonated, and even though people were at different locales, they were having the same experience. And so he was not alone.
Got it. So
never alone.
So I hear you say you're in this environment where the entire paradigm of the entire society is shifting, and that causes changes in the way people relate to each other, relate to their own faith. It's really shaking things up a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how old were you when you met Dr. King?
I was 17.
17. So you'd gone through a period of questioning, you'd gone through a period of agnosticism, and you were in a more radical place when you meet
definitely.
Dr. King, and you have this experience, this transformative. Did you, was that an impetus to kind of coming back to faith from a different angle? And talk a little bit about the putting it back together once you'd kind of torn it all apart.
Okay, so at that moment I was very, very lucky to have a theology teacher at college who was also the campus pastor. And he had studied at Oxford, or was it Cambridge? I can't remember.
And where were you going to school?
I was going to school at Dana College, a small Lutheran Danish college on a hill in Blair, Nebraska.
And one of the few black Lutheran students, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's an understatement. I think there were 2 black students from America. There were more students from Africa.
Sure.
There were like 3. And so my brother finished before me, and he and one of his best friends matriculated and graduated. And then I came through, and I was the first black woman to graduate.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's been 100 years. So.
So it was time.
It was time, yeah, right. And then, or pretty close to 100 at that time.
Agreed.
But, and then my brother came behind me, and then my cousin, and so forth. But the thing that I was going for and talking about that environment was that I was very lucky to have professors who had had traveled widely and studied in other countries and lived in other countries. And my theology professor was and still is, he's still alive, a John Donne scholar. And my dad was very fond of John Donne. And so I was able to have an advisor who I could meet with on a regular basis as a campus pastor to work through this coming back to faith and so forth. And I insisted on going through confirmation again. So I did.
And was that still with the Missouri Synod?
No. This was in the ALC school at this point.
Okay.
And then once again, we were quite sure in the Missouri Synod that the ALC people were going to go to hell.
Right.
Yeah, they were going to burn.
Right.
And no, that was no joke.
I'm sure. Right.
And so the fact that my brother went off to an ALC school, the pastors in town at the next pastor's text study meeting, which my dad, of course, was the only person at the Augsburg Publishing House of color.
Right.
They all prayed that my brother would go to hell going to that ALC Lutheran school.
Oh my.
Oh yeah. And so we've come a long way. My dad used to say that the civil rights movement was the biggest ecumenical movement of the century. And I do believe it's true. I do believe it's true.
I've never thought of it in that terms, but that's...
Yep. They were marching together, people who never talked together. Russian Orthodox, Lutherans, Catholics, Jews, agnostics, atheists, all sorts of people who were arm in arm, willing to give their lives up for this cause.
That really did change a lot of things, didn't it?
It sure did. And that's one that gets very little play and thought. But all this was going on, and my dad was in the press all the time about this. And so here I am sitting on this little campus fighting this battle by myself. And Dad used to come up on the weekends, and we'd go we'd go out to the Blair Cemetery because it was quiet. Nobody ever bothered us. And we'd talk about everything, any struggles I was having on campus racially or even biblically, and things I was learning and so forth and so on. So I had two very wonderful, if you could call them, pastoral coaches who were always careful to let me be me as I was moving through this transformation. And I wanted to, I was more exposed then at that point to writing.
Yeah.
And so it was Buber was a very important person for me with all those German verbs at the ends of sentences. But, and I was very, very taken by the existential movement. And Soren Kierkegaard came into view. And so it was really a time for really a lot of thinking and a lot of absorbing of very deep and important principles about faith.
And so where did you go from there? So you come back to faith in college, you go through confirmation again?
And I joined the college congregation there. Okay, so then I went to work for the Women's Job Corps, and I was still in Omaha at that time. And friends from college who lived here said, come and visit. So I came, and in the process of being here for one longish visit, I went to worship at one of the ALC congregations in the housing projects, and I really liked it. And I got offered a job.
Oh, cool.
And then I got one of the people who was on the church council who I met then offered me a job at his center in social work. And so then the next thing I knew, I had another offer from another social work agency. So
it was all coming together.
Yeah, it was all coming together.
Like,
so
Minneapolis.
3 jobs.
Right.
And so I chose the one and then made the move. And then I I've got the story backwards. I'm sorry. Well, what happened was, no, I didn't go to that little church in the housing projects to begin with. I went to another larger church, which was very close to where I found an apartment. And it was on a main drag, and it was a big pile of stone, as people say. And it was ALC. And yes, this is the story. I went there one Sunday. I was stopped by an usher who blocked my way and said, "You would be more comfortable at that other Lutheran church down there."
Oh my gosh.
So I turned my heel. I'd never, ever been refused entry to a Lutheran church. And it happened here. I was just beside myself.
Oh,
so, of course, I jumped in my car and I went down to that other Lutheran church and found my home.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So these kinds of experiences, if I hadn't been raised to feel that I am part of this church, I own a piece of this real estate, if you will.
Yeah.
I belong here.
Right.
I would have walked away from the Lutheran church.
Oh, for sure.
But I knew then that person wasn't very Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew where Luther stood, and some places was really quite awful.
Right. Sometimes
that's another story, but yes, but for the most part,
it's pretty. It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, but Lutheranism by that point had become clear on its stand on race. Mm-hmm. So it takes things to filter down a lot.
Yes,
it takes time for them to, as we say, filter down to the pews.
Yes, it does.
And I'm quite sure, I shouldn't say I'm quite sure, but I'm probably sure that my family had been Lutheran in this country longer than his.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, so who are you?
Right.
I have a right to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if I hadn't liked it, I wouldn't have stayed at the little church. I would have found another
one. Right.
Church.
Yeah, that's nice.
I think one of the reasons that the civil rights movement seems to have petered out, in a sense, was because it was successful. It made so many changes.
Right.
It made behavior change. So people weren't going around saying the kind of racist stuff they used to say.
Right.
And do.
Right.
And, and the legal changes had been very profound. Mm-hmm. And they had physically moved people around and children, and as a result, the society, as you said earlier, was changing and changed in some of these ways. So, and by that time, the women's movement had taken hold, and then the gay movement had taken hold, and those were all movements that got their energy and a lot of their language off of the civil rights movement.
That's right.
And so I was active in both those movements.
Sure.
And my husband and I were of a mind on all these things, really. And he, at one point, was the EEOC director for the state.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It was very cool. And he is a white guy. He would go to companies, and they would just, they thought that, finally, we can just say what we want to this guy. He's one of us, in other words. And be very surprised when they found out, no, he wasn't one of them. In spite of the fact he wore Brooks Brothers underwear and shirts and all the rest of it. He was a walking advertisement for Brooks Brothers. So, so he looked like the quintessential American privileged male. Mm-hmm. But his sense of fairness was really, in some ways, deeper than mine, especially in the women's movement. He was so clear on that, and he was very influential and supportive in me finding my voice as a feminist.
Oh, that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And did you meet him here in Minneapolis?
I met him in college.
Oh, you met him in college. So you married and then moved.
No.
No. Oh, okay.
No. So he went to the men's Job Corps. I went to the women's Job Corps. So anyway, so we hooked back up together after I came here. So we got married here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had 3 pastors. My dad, and the two pastors at our church. And somebody said this Mary Cheer had better last.
It's been triply blessed.
But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit. You were saying earlier about your experience being, turned away from the church. Mm-hmm. At a certain point after the world changed, overt discrimination became kind of uncool, but yet it still continues in more kind of hidden and insidious ways. Mm-hmm. We talked about that in our class. We talked about microaggressions and some of the more hidden systems of oppression and racism that exist. Talk a bit about the work that you've done and that you do along those lines to combat what remains of systemic racism and how you've been involved in those efforts.
Thank you for that question. That's been really my life's work, actually. And so I teach a lot. I do a lot of training and education in a lot of different arenas, and corporate and health, anywhere there's a chance to have real dialogue and real change. And so many people, until the Black Lives Matter movement arrived and the technology that we have, remained wonderfully ignorant about the fact that there still is racism in this country. And, the language of post-racial entered the vocabulary, which if you really were kind of awake to what was going on in the society, you knew wasn't true.
Right.
And especially if you, as I said in a class the other day, you wear your vulnerability on your skin, as opposed to people finding out that you're gay.
Right.
Okay. Same difference, same end result, really. Sure. But if that's the case, then you're still subject to all of these microaggressions. And what is a microaggression? Well, it's any kind of small, that's why it's micro, sometimes hidden to the very person that's doing it, really kind of racial insult and assault to individuals. There was a clerk at one of my favorite grocery stores who I watched her for months before I did anything, who would routinely okay checks of anybody white coming through. But then when somebody black came through, she had to have all this evidence. Right. You have to show all your ID.
Right.
And one day I had kind of planned it, really. I sent my husband through. Or rather, he went through. I didn't send him through. He went through first. No problem.
Right.
I went through. Then she had to stop me and all the stuff. Right. Now, I had been going to the store long before she was there.
Right.
From the day it opened, actually. And so I said, I'm really troubled by this and so forth. And she said, I said, and you let the person ahead go ahead. And then there was a woman before him. And but she comes here all the time. And I know who she was. I said, I come here all the time. I don't know why you wouldn't know who I am. I stick out more than she does. And she wanted to play it right to the hilt. So no, she wasn't being racial in any way. As she said, racialist.
Racialist.
Mm-hmm. So another made-up word, but anyway, I said to her, no, yeah, you are, and this is something you need to be aware of. Well, anyway, I went to talk to the manager who knew me, of course, and he was just not having any of it. Oh no, one of our best clerks. Oh no, I don't think she has it. And I wanted to say to him, and how would you know?
Right.
You look just like her.
Right.
You have not had to experience what I've had to experience and what I'm experiencing on a daily basis. Or the kind of thing where you go to a shoe sale. Now, in the old days, they would have just one shoe out, and then the clerk would have to go back and get the mate.
Right.
So people wouldn't just abscond with boxes of shoes. Okay, so I'm at my first shoe sale in Minnesota, and the clerk is just right behind me. I can hardly turn without bumping into her. And I said, finally I turned to her and said, is there a problem? Oh, no, can I help you? I said, well, when I need help, I'll ask you. And then she kept right on behind me. And finally, I turned to her and I said, I'm not going to steal one shoe. And she was, oh, no, I didn't mean that. Well, you need to back off. I'll let you know. She wasn't following anybody else like that, you see. So later on, there was Channel, I forget, I think it was Channel 4, yes, did a undercover thing on this very store, among others. And their whole focus on Black people as shoplifters. Mm-hmm. And so in the training that clerks were getting, they were being told to watch Black people.
Wow.
Now, this was carried to such an extreme that one of the biggest gangs in town was an upscale dentist and his wife who had 2 Black collaborators who would go into stores. Everybody would be watching the Black people, and they would steal them blind.
They showed them.
So, yeah. Yeah, they all went to jail. But
right. Well, I guess who showed who, but anyway.
But anyway, so those are the kinds of small aggressions that wear away every day, and you're having to make decisions every day. Now, is this the battle I fight or not? And that's why I'm saying that, it helps to have a centering, if you will.
Yes.
Otherwise, you'd be driven crazy fighting every battle,
or you wouldn't fight.
Or you wouldn't fight
once, and you'd kind of waste away. I imagine. I mean, I don't live that experience, but I can imagine how that might feel.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very important that folks understand that there comes a point at which there is the one interaction which seems on the surface a very mild event that is the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
And then here you go then into this place where all of this stuff has been stored that you haven't reacted to, and you just kind of smushed it down. Mm-hmm. And then here you are just finding yourself just being a screaming Mimi,
Right.
Overreacting in effect to the straw, if you will. And so that's a precarious way to live, and it also affects people's physical bodies, not to mention their emotional and spiritual bodies. But
absolutely.
But the fact that people live in this kind of tension increases blood pressure. It increases diabetes. It increases all the kind of things that lead to small weight babies and so forth. And in short, it's called trauma. It's a form of trauma. And then you have people say, oh, no, things are so much better now. And you're going, oh, my God. And then if you tell them one of these, oh, that's so little. Why are you going there?
Right.
And not understanding the cumulative effect of this kind of stuff. And just living in tension, waiting for the shoe to drop.
Right.
Is this going to be the person who says the racist or does the racist thing to me? And then finally, on this very thing, technology has brought us to a different place where we can now see things that could only be described before, and you only had one person's view of it. Or say of it. And if you're the person who is the victim, you don't want to cry wolf too many times, because then nobody will believe you.
Right.
And that's what's been so amazing about these videos and such, because they've brought it smack to all of our faces. I mean, you can't deny what you're looking at there.
Right.
And it's really horrific to watch a human die. I mean, you want to talk about trauma inducing.
Right.
And so when I see that little boy being shot to death,
Yep.
I'm thinking about, oh my God, how many other kids that I care about that I know are at risk like that. And so we are not afforded when I say we, I talk about African American community. We grieve in concert for these children. You don't grieve just by yourself. You're not an entity by yourself. Being a racial minority, and I don't love that word, but just in terms of numbers,
Sure,
and being at risk means that you feel this in a different way than if you're in the majority. There's so many that and you're in control and so forth and so on. But the community feels this collectively and grieves it collectively, and finding, excuse me, ways to do that. People don't always have a way to do that. I mean, they've got to go about their regular lives and take that part in too as well, and worry about their kids and so forth. So technology has taken us to an entirely different place now.
Mm-hmm. And that is fueling Black Lives Matter, and it's fueling. I think the discourse has become more mainstream now.
Oh, absolutely.
I think just regular Joes and Janes off the street know terms like microaggression, and they, I think, have a better sense of the theory of oppression and can see what's happening. And at the same time, that same technology allows us, I think in some ways as well, to turn a blind eye because we've become a culture of memes, I wrote a paper.
Say something about memes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, I wrote a paper about this last semester in one of my classes about how we used to be, you used to hear the criticism 30-second soundbite culture. And 30-second soundbite culture meant, this idea that we're not getting in-depth news or reporting or analysis, but instead snippets are being picked out here and there. Well, we're down to 2-second meme culture. If 30-second soundbite culture was bad, we're to a place where someone, has a picture and 5 words on it as you're flicking by on your phone in the bathroom. Yep. And so while the technology is a wonderful tool that has helped stir a conversation on a deeper level in some way, it also sort of kind of gets back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. It plays into this polarization that's occurred in our culture, and can make it difficult to have
a deeper conversation. Yes. Yeah. Well, I just want to say one more thing about finding that there are congregations of people who are profoundly moved by both the altar and the street, and where serious work is being done. But we still have yet to, we're very good at writing checks. Right. And to rather what would have been called radical causes. Yeah, you could write a check to Black Lives Matter, but have you come to that place where you are spiritually looking at your own sin in this matter? At the moment when, because you were afraid, you didn't say anything. Yep. Or the moment when you went along with it and shouldn't have. Yep. Or the moment when you yourself were oppressed and said nothing. So we still have a ways to go on really taking the easy way out. And I don't mean easy way out, because these movements need help. They need money. People need physical support. Right. I don't mean it that way, but if that's where it stops, it's not far enough. It has to go kind of like the civil rights movement fixed the surface, yet below the surface to the hearts of each person and to the beating heart of our culture.
racism is still alive and well.
Mm-hmm. And you say to yourself, okay, so, all right, you're a Black person, so what's your role in this? Well, there are a number of ways, as I just mentioned. One of them is to be present. Okay. And even if it isn't your struggle, to be supportive.
Yep.
And one of the things that I've come to really take on personally is that everyone has an oppressor in them. That's original sin. So I might be the pure victim in this setting, but where am I oppressing people in my life? Okay. Is it in my family? Is it on the job? Am I an oppressive boss? We all have to come to grips with that. And, am I oppressing people because I'm more educated than them?
Right.
And, and I once had a student who was wrong all the time. Who worked for me. He was wrong, just wrong. And, you're constantly having to correct him about how the machines worked in the office and so forth and so on. And one day he wrote me a note that said that I just had no idea how I was oppressing him. I was like, oh my gosh. But anyway, I took it to heart. It really struck me that I had to lighten up and find another way to be helpful to him. But I left that. Your temptation is to just wipe something like that off your computer, an email. But I left it in my emails and I visit occasionally, and just to be reminded that we all can and are oppressors. And I would say this too. Now that I've got unlimited access to an audience, that the struggles that you go through, and I go through them yet on a daily basis, are only, to me, manageable if you have a disciplined prayer and theological input on a daily basis in which to struggle with some texts and have some and read something on a daily basis. And I'm one of these people who it helps me to calm down, really, in a sense, and just get centered before my day starts, because there are so many things that happen in a day. And before you go to bed, the world kind of changed. So it's good to be centered. And in a sense, I understand now, as an adult looking back, that Martin Luther King was a disciplined person. And that he really was faithful to a prayer life and a life of religious introspection.
Any final words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, one of which is that on the one hand, we all are oppressors in some way. We all have been oppressed. And we share that with other people. Not in a way that compares my oppression to your oppression, and my oppression is worse than yours, and this and that. That not in that way, but in the way of making human connection. That I may not understand fully your oppression, but I acknowledge that it's your story and it's your truth, and you're entitled to it, and I'm not entitled to question you about that, about the truth of it. And, people might say, well, people lie. Yes, people lie. But you know what? Oftentimes we make them lie to us. I had a friend who did her doctoral dissertation on lying and why people lie. And one important part of that I took away was that they can't get our attention anymore. So being fully present for other people in our lives is tough. It's tough in this busy world that we live in, and And with the national discourse gotten so hideously awry, we've got to right it. We've got to get back to listening to.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Vivian Jenkins-Nelsen.
No, just Vivian.
Thanks for coming on today's
Thanks for having me.
Project Zion.
Yep.
Thanks.